With respect to count 1, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 2, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 3, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonsalves, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 4, the first-degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count 5, the first-degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Bryan Kohberger emotionless as he admits to killing those 4 beautiful Idaho students in 2022. But could prosecutors have done more to make him reveal his motive? We have a live report coming up with reaction from the victims' families. And a dramatic conclusion to Diddy's federal case, acquitted on sex trafficking and racketeering charges, but denied bond. We're asking, is Diddy still dangerous? And a beaming Barry Morphew appears in court for the first time since his second arrest in connection with his wife's murder. We'll have an update on his hearing as we give a voice to the victim, Suzanne Morphew. And it's a big day in Connecticut in the murder trial for Raul Valley. A preview of the all-important closing arguments in the Preppy Party murder trial. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. We have a great show planned for you, so let's get started. Grab that cup of coffee as you like to do at this time. It's time for my opening statement. A huge legal win followed by a big bail setback. What a day for Diddy. My friends, I wasn't shocked at the verdict, especially after I saw the jury in person. I got to watch the defense closing arguments and I could see it. I could see it on some of their faces that they seemed to be in agreement with the defense's arguments. Now, that being said, if we look strictly at the letter of the law, in my legal opinion, prosecutors proved this case. However, it seems to me that the jury was more focused on the spirit of the law. Diddy's legal team arguing that the federal government put his sex life on trial. And the jurors may have agreed that this was government overreach. Now, I know that the case victims did not think that this was overreaching. And this morning, my thoughts and my prayers go out to the women who bravely shared their truth in this trial. The verdict doesn't change what they say happened to them. It just means that the jury didn't find that the government proved it. Now, as for Diddy not going free, I thought the decision to refuse him bond was unfair. This is why. Bond isn't meant to be punitive. That's what sentencing's for. Bond is just meant to ensure someone's appearance at their upcoming court date. I also think the likelihood of him being violent now or in the future is extremely low. My friends, I think the bad boy has learned his lesson. And I will say that he should not be treated any more harshly or any less harshly just because he's a celebrity. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
What did you see Tyler Da Silva doing?
He was also on the ground getting beat on.
Why didn't you just get in that car and leave?
I saw my best friend, somebody that loved. Nobody was helping him.
In Connecticut, we've got the closing argument set to begin this morning in the Preppy Party murder trial for defendant Raul Valley. We're going to go there live together once they kick off, expected to happen roughly 10 a.m. Eastern time. Also, in that hour in Indiana, sentencing for Misty Knoll is set to begin at 10:30 a.m. This defendant pleaded guilty to theft and tax evasion charges. Her husband, who was a former sheriff, was sentenced to 12 years in prison for similar crimes. You might remember this case back in October. And in Iowa, we've got testimony resuming in the Widow's Words murder trial for defendant Karina Cooper. This woman is accused of shooting her husband to death back in 2021. Right now, though, we turn to your top story this morning. Bryan Kohberger accepting a plea offer to avoid the death penalty and admitting to killing those 4 beautiful University of Idaho students. For more on his hearing, let's bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, standing by live there in Idaho with the latest for us. Matt, good morning. Set the scene for us, if you would, please. Tell us what it was like in that courtroom Wednesday.
You know, I think, Julie, good morning to you first off. I think this community in Idaho is still coming to terms with the fact that there was even a plea deal accepted and put on the table in the first place. It was definitely surprising to those victims' families. Here at the courthouse behind me, there was so much media from around the country. You could barely walk through. There was extra, court staff here and also security helping all the families make their way into the courtroom. Very famous courtroom, as we were here for Lori Vallow's first trial and also her husband, the Doomsday Prophet, Chad Daybell. It was in that same very large courtroom. And Bryan Kohberger was just so callous and calculated and almost robotic, no emotion on his face, as we finally heard from him for the very first time, not explaining why he did it, but explaining the fact that he actually did commit the murders. Let's listen.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
And again, Kohberger was emotionless in that courtroom yesterday, not explaining what led up to him making that decision to stalk these 4 college students, to go into their house, and then to target Maddie and then kill those 4 college students. So hopefully we still get answers with that. His parents were also in the courtroom. I sat right behind them. They were trying to make eye contact with him. He did not look back. And it was just, you could hear a pin drop. And there was just so much emotion in that courtroom, Julie.
Mm-hmm. Right, Matt. I'm sure from everybody except for him, as you noted and as we could see in the video you just played for us. Just awful, just disgusting to hear him just admit it so calmly, casually. These children's lives mattered. Matt, tell me, as we look ahead to when he's going to be sentenced, give us the date, please, and what exactly we can expect to happen when that hearing rolls around.
Yeah, so I have to let you know that I cannot hear you, but I think that you asked me what's next. So we head now to the sentencing phase, which is scheduled for later this month on July 23rd at the courthouse here behind me. It's going to be another emotional and very busy day. Bryan Kohberger will no longer be allowed to wear street clothes now that he's no longer cloaked in the presumption of innocence, since the trial has now been vacated here. And it's going to be a long day with those victims and their families being able to make those victim impact statements. We're going to hear from each of the family members on the 23rd. And then, it'll be up to Kohberger if we're going to actually be able to hear more from him and the motive behind these killings and if he has anything to say to the court. But the sentence is already on the table, which is only going to be those life sentences, consecutive, one after the other, along with the 10 years plus for the burglary charge. The judge made it very clear that he cannot bring back the death penalty, and that the only thing that he can do within the law, within the Idaho state legislature, is do a downward departure. So, a lot of people upset about that, and I'm sure that we'll talk about it, but we're looking at just him serving life behind bars without the possibility of parole. He saves his own life after admitting to killing 4 others.
Matt Johnson, live for us there outside of the courthouse in Idaho. Thank you so much for that early update. Even though you can't hear me, thank you. Perhaps you can see me in your monitor. We appreciate you. We'll talk more later. I want to bring in now our legal analyst guest. He's a very high-profile criminal defense attorney. He also served as a prosecutor. Attorney Michael J. Brown is joining us live from New York. Michael, good morning to you. I want to ask you about the point that Matt Johnson just raised, something that I'm hearing a lot of people talk about. Yesterday was very unsatisfying, as you know, for the victims' families. They wanted to understand why. They wanted to understand more about how this happened and whether it was planned for years, for months, for, you know, whatever the case may be. And he didn't talk. And so that raises an important legal question, as you know. Do you think prosecutors could have done any more in the negotiation of this plea agreement to make him offer up some more details about what he did?
Well, you know, Julie, good morning. They could have done potentially a proffer in exchange for this promise of not seeking the death penalty before they actually walked into the court and you know, finalized the actual disposition. And they could have had these conversations in their office with some type of agreement in place. It's unusual. And I think if anything is going to happen in terms of these answers that I know the victims' families are really interested in hearing, that could happen at the sentencing part of it. And keep in mind, I know here in New York, we have what's called a pre-sentence investigation by the probation department, where they get into the details with the defendant, and that report is issued to the judge. And I'm sure Idaho has a very similar type of situation. That report could very well contain the information that we're talking about. I don't expect Kohberger himself, though, to give up that at the time of sentencing.
Interesting point, Michael. So let's talk about that more. So we know that he's waiving all his rights to appeal anything. So that removes the danger of, oh gosh, what if I say something at sentencing? We often run into that with defendants. We talk about it all the time here. Oh, they don't want to say anything or even apologize because that would be admitting guilt or looking at taking an appeal. Here, wouldn't affect him legally. Tell me why you think he may not offer anything up.
Yeah, you're exactly on point, Julie. You know, if you go to trial and get convicted, you have to be cautious because on appeal now, if you at sentencing admitted to all your guilt, it kind of kills the issue. Here it's a negotiated plea, so he did waive his right to appeal. It's all done. He can certainly be frank. Why don't I think it will happen? You know, we followed this case from the beginning, and I know you've been on top of this. He seems very diabolical. I can't imagine him coming into a courtroom and talking and professing his remorse and giving it all up. He just doesn't strike me as that type of individual. And it goes hand in hand with the heinous nature of the 4 murders. So although I don't know him from a hole in the wall, just watching him over the last course of the year or two, I doubt that that's going to happen, unfortunately.
That's such excellent analysis, Michael. You're right. Very observant. We've seen his behavior. We've had psychology experts coming on who've told us the behavior seems sociopathic. And watching him yesterday pretty much confirmed that for me. I'm sure for many others, that the way he just very calmly, yes, yes, no emotion, not a tear, not an I'm sorry, nothing from him. Sounds about right. Michael, I want to show you a statement from Kaylee Gonsalves' family members. This is heartbreaking. They said the plea began with the defendant claiming responsibility for his actions with one-word responses. All were sufficient for the court and the prosecution team, because that is what this plea was about today, the court and the prosecution. This plea did not represent the victims' families. It represented an easy way out and no answers. We will move on to sentencing, and we will be hopeful that the court will allow for some much-needed grace moving forward. And finally, the family won't have to deal with the bumbling Latah County prosecution team. Wow. Michael J. Brown, what do you think when you hear that statement from this grieving and understandably angry family?
Julie, there's no right or wrong. These are families who lost their loved ones. So there's nothing they can say that's wrong. And I understand that part of it. Let's remember, Ann Taylor, the defense attorney, did a great job. She advocated for her client. She was zealous. She made some real good motions. She had the matter moved to a different venue. She did what she's supposed to do. But on the other side of this, the prosecution, they just secured a plea, 4 murder convictions, guarantee life in jail, and not have to put the families through the ordeal. And you and I know, Julie, when I say ordeal, that's an understatement of going to trial. This fellow will spend the rest of his living life in jail. I really do think the prosecution has secured a victory. As much as you can get a victory, I think that they did what they were supposed to do here.
Excellent analysis. Michael J. Brown, thank you so much for all of that. So fortunate to have you with us this hour. Stand by, please. And a quick programming note. Tonight on Vinnie Politan Investigates, the family attorney representing the Gonsalves family is going to be joining the show to talk about this plea deal and the family's reaction to it. This is an interview you certainly don't want to miss. You'll see it tonight right here on Court TV at 9 p.m. Eastern, only on Vinnie Politan Investigates. Still ahead here on opening statements.
Of course, we would have liked to have seen a conviction on the sex crimes in RICO, but we understand that beyond a reasonable doubt is a high standard.
I've been saying this for months. We've said it with each lawsuit that came out, and today that was proven true. The media got it wrong about Sean Combs every single day for nearly 2 years.
More reaction from Diddy's shocking case verdict. And look at this sketch. He even looks shocked and very grateful as he fell to his knees after the jury was let out of the room. He's denied bond, though. We're going to talk about whether he is still a danger to society. Plus, closing arguments are set to begin this morning in the murder trial for Raul Valley. We're going to preview the big day ahead centered around this fatal fight.
We want to understand the mindset behind your actions in this case.
I'm going to give you a news scoop.
What happened?
I did it.
Very funny, really. I'm laughing. When you see me, I laugh.
I don't want any of this. You think you should get some kind of credit for not killing people?
Not at all, no.
You are a shrewd operator.
Interview with a Killer. Marathon starting Friday, 11:10 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now for what's trending in true crime, Sean Diddy Combs' shocking split verdict on Wednesday. It has everybody talking. The jury acquitting the music superstar of the most serious charges the government brought against him, racketeering conspiracy. He was also acquitted of 2 counts of sex trafficking. Those also carry a mandatory minimum punishment. He was convicted of 2 counts of transportation for purposes of prostitution. Those charges carry a maximum punishment of up to 10 years in prison. Now, his attorneys declared victory outside of the courthouse.
Today's a great victory. It's a great victory for Sean Combs. It's a great victory for the jury system. You saw that the Southern District of New York prosecutors came at him with all that they had. They're not stopping, but one thing stands between all of us and a prison, and that is a jury of 12 citizens. And we had a wonderful jury. They listened to every word, and they got the situation right, or certainly right enough.
Hours later, the judge denied Diddy bond. He said that he has a propensity for violence, and he thinks he's a danger to society. So Diddy's got to remain in jail until he's sentenced. That date is set tentatively for October 3rd, but Diddy's defense team wants to expedite that to try to get him free. So let's talk about whether this decision was fair for the judge to deny Diddy bond. Still with me, high-profile criminal defense attorney Michael J. Brown. Want to welcome into the conversation entertainment commentator Holland Reed. All right, Michael, let me go to you first. So legally speaking, was this bond denial fair?
I think so, Julie. I heard your opening statement. I know you disagreed with it. You know, on one part, yes, he beat the top charges, so that would make him less of a risk. But on the other side of this is he did get convicted of a significant felony, and there is some significant jail time associated with that conviction, albeit much less than what he was looking at. Having said that, remember, one of the factors that the federal judge can also look at is that danger to the community, as you indicated. And even though he may have been acquitted of several of the most important charges, if you look and listen to what went on during this trial, yeah, I think that's a justifiable concern that he is, in fact, a danger to the community from top to bottom. So I think the judge obviously has discretion, but I have no qualms with what he did and the fact that he wanted him to stay in custody pending the sentencing.
Michael J. Brown, I certainly respect your opinion. Holland Reed, I want to get yours now, please. Your thoughts on the bond denial, just the bond denial.
My thoughts on the bond denial, I'm glad, because we're dealing with the attempt of retaliation or redemption. This is not a person that showed any remorse for anything that he's done this entire trial. So retaliation or redemption, I believe, because as he was in custody, he continued to harass. He continued to reach out. He continued to have control. That is why I think the judge was like, absolutely not. And correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, these people, these victims, as you said in your opening statements, everyone needs to get a protective order at this point if this person is going to be set free. This is not a game. This is someone with a lot of power, a lot of money. So I think we're dealing with retaliation on the back end of all of this. If he even, time served in jail, okay? So, but this is, I'm very scared for the victims because he feels empowered. And I watched everyone's depiction of him dropping to his knees. Everyone is saying the same thing. This is not normal. This is scary for people that are the victims of Sean Diddy Combs.
Holland, I really appreciate those points. That is a very fair assessment of what could happen here. You brought up something really interesting. Part of why he was denied bond going into trial, little refresher, was what you hit on, Holland, that the government was saying that while the investigation was ongoing, because we remember we saw the raids, we knew that the feds were looking at him, we didn't know if they'd charge him yet. They said he was intimidating witnesses, that he was trying to get people not to testify, obstructing justice, and so that is certainly a fair concern with him. And the government was adamant. I mean, they were jumping up and down, in terms of wanting him to stay locked up for those reasons. We know Cassie submitted a letter saying that she felt afraid. So I appreciate both of your points. Let's turn to something else along these lines. One of Combs' alleged victims who did not testify in the trial, this is one that we thought was going to be victim number 3, but we never heard from her, never saw her. The government didn't pursue charges with her. Gina Hahn, she shared her thoughts on how she would feel if Combs was acquitted. Take a listen to what she told TMZ. She said that he is not a danger to society. This interview done a couple days before the verdict.
If Diddy does win this trial, do you think your life will be threatened in any kind of way?
No.
You don't think so? You think everything will be safe? Because the girl, Aubrey O'Day, she said that if Diddy wins, she's going to leave the country.
I mean, he never did anything dangerous to me. I'm not scared.
Okay, so is he still a danger to society? Oh, Holland, I want to go to you first here. You're shaking your head. What do you think?
I'm shaking my head because that is the worst thing that I cannot stand, that people say, oh, they didn't do anything to me, so they're fine. I promise you that has nothing to do with what is going on. I do not understand why people cannot have empathy or understanding that just because it didn't happen to you, it doesn't mean it didn't happen to them. So she might be telling the truth. That's perfectly fine. All things can be true at once. 10 things can be true at once. Cassie could have wanted to have this. Diddy could have I'm sorry. All things can be true at once. And that right there is the problem with this entire case. They decided to, the jury, I'm sorry. This is very emotional for me.
I can tell you're very passionate about it. It's okay, Holland. Go ahead.
I'm very passionate. Yeah, I know, Julie. Thank you. So thank you for having me on and letting me speak. Of course. I've been trying to formulate my thoughts. My point is this: all things can be true at once. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, we know that they definitely drug in the bedroom aspect of this, and that's why the defense won, because they definitely painted this as a bedroom case. This is not a RICO charge. But in the end of the day, people were affected. People were hurt. People's lives were ruined. So just because it didn't happen to you doesn't mean it didn't happen to them. That's all that I wanted to say about that. So I digress.
Sure. Yeah, no, and that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I mean, look, we have a hard time in society getting victims to be heard, believed. That's why, I wanted to acknowledge in my open this morning, I feel for everyone who shared their truth. That doesn't mean this didn't happen. Like you said, Holland, both things can be true. It can be true that these things happen, and the jury just felt there wasn't enough proof to establish the crimes that were alleged here. Michael J. Brown, tell me, in terms of dangerousness to society, let's see. Looking at Diddy, here where we are now, not even looking ahead to sentencing and what he's going to get, just where we are now. How dangerous do you think he is, at this present time? Not down the road, but, at the conclusion of this case?
Julie, you can't have it both ways. And what do I mean by that? If you look at the defense, they kept talking about, hey, he is the culprit of domestic violence, but yet he's not guilty of racketeering. They conceded the domestic violence. Of course they did, because you saw the video from the hotel. You saw a man strike and beat the one he supposedly loved. He hasn't changed, and all the evidence that came in from that point forward kind of reiterated it. Now, the jury didn't feel that it was a racketeering case, so be it. I understand they didn't prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt, but to suggest that he is not a danger to the community simply because he beat the top counts, I don't buy that. I think everything that came forward, all the evidence that came forward, although it may not have sustained those charges, I do think he's a danger to the community, and the conviction certainly makes him a risk of flight. And I think the judge actually did the right thing by keeping him in custody.
Wow, and that says a lot. Hearing you say that, Michael J. Brown, because you are a very high-profile criminal defense attorney. People come to you when they get into big trouble. And so hearing you say that, that means a lot. That's why I wanted to have you and Holland have this discussion with me. This is a hard one, and I think back, because I feel for these survivors, and I think back, in hindsight's 2020. You wonder, what if he were brought into state court on DV charges? What would have happened then? His attorney made the comment, oh, he would have pleaded. Would he have? Would he have, or would he have fought it? So, hopefully we'll think of this as, something we can walk away from these tragic circumstances with what happened and think about how can we help empower people to feel comfortable reporting when they're victimized and give them a support system to walk them through what can be a brutal place, criminal court, that is. And Diddy's, he's going to civil court soon, so that'll be our next discussion for another day. Holland Reed, I know we got to let you go. Thank you so much for the excellent insight. Michael's coming with us. Do the same at home. Please go get another coffee. When we come back, we're taking you to Colorado, where a smiling Barry Morphew, look at him, appeared in court after being charged again with his wife Suzanne's murder. This morning, we're giving a voice to Suzanne. We're remembering the victim. Plus, closing argument happening in the Preppy Party murder trial of Raul Valley. This guy took the stand at his own defense. Will it help? That's coming up.
The grand jury has indicted Barry Morphew on the single count of murder in the first degree. Law enforcement, the Chaffee County community, and Colorado as a whole has never stopped fighting for justice for Suzanne.
We're giving a voice to the victims this morning, talking about what's ahead for defendant Barry Morphew as he makes his first appearance in court, accused of the murder of his wife, Suzanne. Suzanne Morphew vanished back in 2020. The 49-year-old mother of two was reported missing on Mother's Day. Her husband was the last known person to see her alive. Scripps News Denver brings us the latest.
I'm Denver 7's Claire Lavazorio outside the Alamosa County Justice Center, where Barry Morphew had his initial court appearance here in Colorado on Tuesday. He was escorted into the courthouse, handcuffed in an orange and white jumpsuit, smiling as soon as he saw one of his daughters there to support him. He's charged with murder for a second time. Barry Morphew is back in Colorado, appearing before a judge in his new murder case. His face lit up as soon as he saw one of his daughters sitting in the courtroom. This 30-minute appearance in front of Judge Amanda Hopkins was mostly procedural. Hopkins outlining standards for media coverage and courtroom etiquette.
Our entire community needs to be able to use this courthouse undeterred. They don't deserve to have to be subjected to this just because there is interest in Mr. Morphew's case.
Though Denver 7 did learn about a possible conflict of interest between Morphew and the public defender's office.
We would anticipate, expect, and ask the court to appoint the office of the alternate defense counsel.
Prosecutors say they've provided almost all discovery materials to the defense, except for one witness transcript.
We're prepared to set trial at any time, but of course we've just given them multiple terabytes of discovery.
On June 20th, Morphew was taken into custody in Maricopa County, Arizona. This comes nearly 2 years after Denver 7 was the only station alongside investigators as they discovered his missing wife's remains just outside of the town of Moffett. New details from a grand jury indictment say Barry was the last known person to see her alive. And during Suzanne Morphew's autopsy, an animal tranquilizer known as BAM was found in her bones. The indictment claims that Barry was a deer farmer and the only private citizen living in that entire area of the state that had access to BAM at the time of his wife's disappearance. Morphew is set to be back in court on September 2nd at 1:30. His attorneys say at that time he'll be ready to discuss his bond. I'm in Alamosa. Claire Lavazorio, Denver 7.
September 2nd will be right around the corner. So Barry Morphew, what was up with that smile when he was in the courtroom? A lot of people talking about that. A lot of people in the true crime community also want to know if these charges are going to stick this second time around. Let's bring in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Michael J. Brown. Okay, let's start with the defendant's very optimistic appearance in the courtroom. Michael, what'd you think of that?
Julie, I don't know if it's really the optimistic part of it. I'm sure he takes this seriously. If you look when he came out initially, this is a murder charge. And what you really see is he obviously noted his one or two of his daughters are in the courtroom, and that was really refreshing, and it was a friendly face, and it's a family member. So I think that was the reaction. I think the media, quite frankly, is making way too much of it. I don't think it's anything more than he identified and saw his children, and that's refreshing and comforting to him. I think that's the extent of it.
You think it was just a glance at one of his daughters? We do know that one of his daughters was there, the other was not. So you think, well, because that's the clip. Obviously, everybody's talking about that clip. Why is he smiling? But great explanation if it was just an acknowledgement of his child.
Yeah, I do. I don't know anything about him, or I know what I read about the case, but that happens all the time when you see the defendant will come out, they'll acknowledge a family member, they'll be so happy and excited to see them. It's independent of the charges, and what happens is they blow it up and they make more of it than it is. He's not taking it seriously, he thinks this is a joke, but I don't think that's the case.
I appreciate it, Michael. And I know you can also appreciate what we're looking at here. So we have a parent holding hands with his two beautiful daughters. Now he's behind bars. We'll see what happens at his next hearing. Their mother is deceased. Looks here, and this video was taken quite some time ago, they were supporting him. Don't know if that's still going to be the case. Perhaps one is. We know one was present. I don't want to speculate on why the other daughter wasn't there, or what her thoughts may be. But how difficult is that in cases you've had where you have one parent accused of killing the other parent?
Yeah, these domestic cases are horrible, and it happens all the time. And now you have the children will lose both parents. One's dead, and one could potentially spend the rest of their lives in jail. It's horrible on the kids. It's horrible on the family. Everybody loses. But it's interesting in this case, as you pointed out, Julie, that one of the daughters is supporting the father. And despite the new indictment and some of the new evidence that came forward, I don't know if that's going to continue throughout the process as evidence may get revealed. But for the time being, that's the case.
Great points, Michael. I want to play for you a clip that went viral at the time. It still talked about. I'm sure these prosecutors will use it in the trial. This is when Barry's out helping investigators look for his wife, and he talks about how maybe a mountain lion got to her.
Was it a crash? I mean, the bike looked, the way it was laying, it kind of looked like it, but there's not really that much damage to the bike. That's the thing.
Lion?
Yeah, it was just like lion.
No lion?
I didn't see anything that would indicate.
Okay, Michael, thoughts on that and how you defend that?
He's suggesting something. How sincere it comes across, I don't know. You see these all the time when you have a husband who kills the wife, and then he's active and he leads the search parties and gets volunteers in the community to look for the wife, and then we find out he's the one responsible for the crime, and then he gets convicted, and the joke's on who. But I don't know. I don't have enough here to really make that comment. And it may be legit. There's a presumption of innocence, so we have to afford him that presumption. And maybe he's just simply suggesting an alternative theory in terms of why she's not there and what happened to her. Mm-hmm. Mountain lion? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
That clip just, I don't know, it's the one that I guess stuck with me the most, perhaps. So we'll see what happens with this guy. I think he's going to fight it. I do, Michael. I think he's going to fight it all the way to trial. Unfortunately, our cameras are allowed in Colorado, so we'll get to watch it together. Michael J. Brown, thank you for all of this. Before we head to break, we want to do what we always make a point to do on this show, and that's remember the victims. So right now, let's remember Suzanne Morphew. She was a mother of 2. She beat cancer twice. She was also an avid mountain biker. Let's hope that her family gets some justice. We'll be right back.
We want to understand the mindset behind your actions in this case.
I'm going to give you a news scoop.
What happened?
I did it.
Very funny, really. I laugh. When you see me, I laugh.
I don't want any of this. You think you should get some kind of credit for not killing people?
Not at all, no.
You are a shrewd operator.
Interview with a Killer. Marathon starting Friday, 11:10 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now for what's tipping the scales of justice, we're a little more than an hour away from the all-important closing arguments in the Preppy Party murder trial. Defendant Raul Valley is accused of stabbing 4 people during a high school party brawl. One of them, the young man on the left, Jimmy McGrath, was killed. Valley has turned down 2 different plea offers, and we've seen a parade of young witnesses testifying in this case, including the defendant himself. Here are just a few of the most impactful moments from the courtroom action leading up to this morning.
How were you feeling at that point?
Everything just went black.
When you say everything went black, what's the next thing that you remember?
My face was in the ground. Just the ground. And people were just stomping and kicking and punching everywhere.
I watched the defendant go up to Jimmy and stab Jimmy.
When the defendant came up to Jimmy, was it a purposeful stabbing?
Yes.
Just kind of lifted up my shirt and looked, and I was like, holy like I was stabbed. I heard the bubbles come from out of my chest, and I just immediately thought the worst.
I had objected multiple times to us going, and he didn't stand up for me or say anything in that regard. I didn't want to go to Tyler Rich's house.
Why didn't you want to go to Tyler Rich's house, Mackenzie?
Because I grew up in Shelton, and a bunch of people who I was friends with, I knew would probably be at that party. So it seemed as if there was some type of confrontation going on between them, and I knew I didn't want to be a part of it.
And that young woman right there was Valley's girlfriend at one point in time, his ex-girlfriend now. So let's talk about what each side needs to do in their closing arguments. Let's bring back in attorney Michael J. Brown. All right, Michael, you've been a prosecutor. You're a criminal defense attorney. So starting with the prosecution, they carry the burden, put that hat back on. What do they need to tell this jury?
Julie, I think one of the most important things they're going to need to emphasize is he is the initial aggressor. All the evidence points to him being the aggressor. He came there with a purpose. He attacked people. And the fact that he may have been the subject of some contact and some physical aspect to it doesn't matter because he's the initial aggressor. He started the fight. And unfortunately, he ended it by stabbing people and killing people. So I think that they need to stress he came there with a purpose. This is what he did, and he accomplished his mission. The flip side, and do you want me to address the defense?
Yes, we do. Well, please.
They're going to go the other way now, and they're going to say, hey, look, you saw him on the stand. He was sympathetic. He was emotional. And what he did was he portrayed himself as the victim. He was getting attacked. He basically blacked out, and he did all he knew how to do, which is fight or flight. He defended himself. He saved himself, and it was a classic self-defense case. Those are the two sides.
Yeah, no, Michael, appreciate it. So can we talk about the jury a little bit? I'm curious what your experiences have been when you've had fight cases like this, whether prosecuting them or defending someone involved in, whenever there's a group fight, whether party fight, a bar fight, you know, whatever it is. What's your experience in terms of the jury and their response to those kinds of situations?
Yeah, you know, these types of situations, good question, Julie, they're like these free-for-alls. So when you don't have that one-on-one and you have that mob mentality and everything's going around and nobody's clear or certain about what's happening, and then you have alcohol, then you may have drugs, then you may have these young kids and relationships and girlfriends, and it all gets intertwined. It is a difficult case to prove from the prosecution standpoint and much more defensible for defense attorneys. And it's a free-for-all. In today's world, the one benefit the prosecutor may have is everybody takes out their cameras and records. I don't get that. They don't intervene. They're sitting there filming. It could help the prosecution. It could also be damning to the prosecution. But the good thing is it is a piece of evidence, and hopefully it captures, as we're watching now, what actually transpired.
Right. Michael, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's a pet peeve of mine because we're in this world where everyone wants to capture everything and clicks, do everything for clicks. I'm so sick of it. And when I think about, could somebody have helped intervene? Could somebody have saved a life or prevented one of those people from being injured if they would have just put down the phone and run over and pulled somebody away? Or like, it's baffling to me, you know, and thinking about that. I wonder if there's any lessons we can walk away from. My nana used to always say, out of everything bad comes something good. Is there anything we can think about here? Is there anything parents can teach their kids? Is there anything we can be more aware of? This is a prep school, you know, and somebody's got a knife at this party and used it, and look where we are. Michael, what do you say to any of the parents who are out there watching this case and might be fearful for their own children?
Yeah, I'll only do my own personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
My wife would always say to my kids, make good decisions. Think about what you're going to do. Think about where you're going. Think about who you're going to be with. And think about what your actions are going to be before you act. And, you know, this kid, he may be a decent kid, but he didn't think about what he was doing, and now he's going to face the consequences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those situations where it's not good for anybody. There's no winning in this. All of these children's lives have been changed forever. Their parents' lives, their loved ones, just terrible. Closing argument's going to start this morning. We will go there then. Michael J. Brown, you're awesome. Thank you so much for such a great show this morning. Oh, and we matched too. We must have called each other black and white stripes going on. Have a wonderful.
Got the memo, Julie.
Got the memo. You sure did, my friend.